Cyrena Johnson Potts. She was born June the 26th, 1886 in Texas. She died in June 18th, 1965 in Texas. Her father was Wiley Ray Hodges Jr. Mother was Sarah Susan Johnson. She married John Rayford Faulkner, and they had some kids. They had Virginia Irene Faulkner, Wiley Ray Faulkner, Catherine Potts Faulkner, and Sarah Margie Faulkner. So here's a little story about Cyrena Johnson Potts.
All of this family was born and raised around Watauga. The Potts, the Faulkners, all of those daughters, and they married with people around there. Now we're going to talk about Grandmother Faulkner. She was one of the three children of Wiley Ray. They lived on the original farm that he inherited 60 acres of west of Watauga in Tarrant County. And from that, the girls grew up and in that area, and they married local people, local guys. John Rayford Faulkner was actually from in the Sherman, Texas area, but he and his 5 brothers and sisters were all in Fort Worth. They were all farmers. Each had farms. The farms that they had primarily were Wiley Ray Jr. property, and they sharecropped all of the daughters, husbands, sharecropped these farms, etc. Now, Wiley Ray Potts and all his son-in-laws had cattle, and once or twice a year they'd have a cattle drive from each of the son-in-laws, and they would drive them down what is now Beach Street, Fort Worth, to the cattle pens of Swift and Armour in North Fort Worth. That was an all-day job. They would not let me ride because I was too little, so the son-in-laws would ride these down the road, and that's where they sold their cattle. And the Faulkner, John Rayford Faulkner was a farmer, and he was on one of his father-in-law's, Wiley Ray's farm, right west of Watauga also. He lived there till about 1936, I guess. And then they sold and got a farm up at Argyle, Texas, west of Argyle, 160 acres. And they lived there for a number of years. They had a deal that they could get another farm. They sold it and moved to east of Keller, Texas, off of the Mid-Cities, I think is the street. Anyway, right east of Keller. And they lived there till they became pretty old. They then sold that farm and then moved to Riverside area of Fort Worth and had a home, and that's where they passed away. Their daughters were Wiley Ray Faulkner, Norman, and Sarah Margie Faulkner and Catherine Potts Faulkner both died at birth. And all these are buried in the Birdville Cemetery. Great-granddaddy Potts bought 8 or 10 or so lots in Birdville. They died in 1852. They were the first 2 people buried in the Birdville Cemetery. This is Wiley Ray Hodges again. My grandmother was Cyrena Potts Faulkner. Wiley Potts passed away in 1852. He was the first person, he and his wife was buried in Birdville Cemetery. All of his other children now are buried there. And there was 8 or 10 or whatever. My mother's buried there. My brothers are buried there. She then was married at Johnson family, east of there, of Watauga. And they had the children. One of them, my mother, had married Herman Walter Hodges. But Grandmother Faulkner was a housewife as all of her sisters, and she's a good cook. They had their farms. They did the same everything to make a living on a farm. Well, their children was Virginia Irene Faulkner, that's my mother, married Herman Walter Hodges. Wiley Ray Faulkner, younger, married a Noble T. Norman. She and he both were school teachers in the Fort Worth area. I was a student to Wiley Ray and them when I went to Rosen Heights School, 1936, North Fort Worth. Kathleen passed away at birth. Little Sarah Margie Faulkner, she passed away at birth. And they're all buried in Birdville Cemetery. But The Faulkner family was well liked. John Rayford Faulkner introduced me to chewing tobacco when I was 9 years old. I'd go up to the farm, and I loved tobacco, and I'd steal his chewing tobacco, and he didn't know it. But at that point in time, I loved it. So anywhere I could steal tobacco out of his pipe can or whatever, I did every time I went up there. But I'm 90 years old now, and I've just quit smoking, so I guess it didn't hurt me. But the Faulkner family, John Rayford, he was establishing his part. He had a thrashing machine that went custom from field to field to do the oats and wheat harvest. The 28-inch separator that they did the thrashing was pulled by a old engine, Rumley, all steel tires, very primitive. They'd pull that thrasher to this farm, and then they get that thrasher and they go to another farm. He had this thrasher. He did custom doings for a long time. So he did a lot of things there to make money with, besides selling cows. He also had some dairy and stuff. They also didn't have electricity, so he and Grandmother Faulkner obtained a home Delco electric making machine. It had lots of batteries out in this building. It had a little gasoline engine, went pop, pop, pop. It then charged the batteries. The batteries were tied into the house with wires. That was their electricity. It was very primitive. Sometimes they couldn't use it, and sometimes they did, but that was their power. That was one of the other things. So they were aggressive. They did a lot of modern things. And so I'd say they had a good life, but he was not a real good manager, and the Depression time hurt him bad, a lot of people. Okay, we'll go into Grandmother Faulkner's sisters later, Ida Mae Potts Grigsby and old Ethel Potts Donald later.
Yeah.